Recap. The spirits of the river answered Nkem's heartfelt prayers, blessing her and Akin with twin sons Chidi and Dyke. Bound by a sacred promise, the boys were destined for greatness. Yet, as they grew, Chidi's boldness and charisma earned him the village's admiration, while Dyke, quieter and more reflective, struggled in his shadow. Beneath their laughter, a silent rift began to form, as the seeds of envy took root in Dyke's heart. Part 2. In Omugwe, envy was a whisper, a silent current beneath still waters. For Dyke, it began as a fleeting thought, a momentary ache, but envy once ignored grows like a vine, winding tightly until it strangles what was once whole. As the brothers stood on the cusp of manhood, the choices they made would test their bond and the village's faith in the spirits, like never before. The bond between Chidi and Dyke, though still strong, began to strain under the weight of unspoken feelings. Time passed, and the twins grew into adolescence, their personalities sharpening like stones smoothed by the river's flow. Chidi's boldness blossomed into leadership, earning him admiration and trust among the villagers. He was the first to volunteer for a hunt, the first to defend the younger children when they were in trouble. His name was spoken with pride, often in stories told around the village fires. Dyke, however, found himself increasingly cast in his brother's shadow. His reflective nature, once seen as thoughtful, was now often overlooked. He became the quieter twin, the one who followed rather than led. Though he loved Chidi, a quiet resentment began to grow within him, an envy he could not name, but one that gnawed at the edges of his heart. One sweltering afternoon, a test of courage came upon the twins. Ekinin, working in the yard, noticed a rustling in the bushes near the goat pen. He paused, his hands tightening around the wooden hoe. From the shadows slithered a venomous snake, its emerald body coiled and ready to strike. Ekin froze, his voice caught in his throat as the snake's unblinking eyes fixed on him. Before he could call for help, Chidi appeared, his steps quick and purposeful. Seizing a sturdy branch, he moved with the precision of a seasoned hunter. In one fluid motion, he brought the branch down on the snake's head, killing it instantly. Akini exhaled in relief, his chest heaving as he embraced his son. The villagers soon gathered to hear the tale, their voices raised in celebration of Chidi's bravery. That night, they held a feast in his honor, the air filled with the sound of drums and laughter. Chidi was showered with praise, his name chanted as the hero of Omugwe. Dyke sat on the fringes of the gathering, his hands folded tightly in his lap. He clapped when the others clapped, smiled when the others smiled, but his heart churned with envy. The firelight reflected in his stormy eyes as he watched Chidi bask in the villagers' adoration. That night he slipped away into the shadows, seeking the solitude of the forest. Beneath the ancient baobab tree he sank to his knees, his fists digging into the earth. The silence of the forest pressed against him, and tears streamed down his face. "Why not me?" he whispered to the night. "Why must I always stand in his shadow?" The wind stirred the leaves above him, carrying a familiar whisper. "You are more than the shadow you cast, Dyke. Your path is yours to choose." This time, Dyke did not look around. He closed his eyes, letting the words sink into the depths of his soul. He wanted to believe them, yet the bitterness inside him remained, a current too strong to resist. Years passed, and the twins became young men. Chidi continued to rise in prominence, his confidence and skill earning him the respect of all. Dyke, meanwhile, withdrew further into himself, his quiet resentment hardening into resolve. He yearned to step out of his brother's shadow, to prove himself as more than Chidi's twin. One evening he approached Ekini as the family sat around the hearth. The flames danced in his dark eyes, and his voice was steady but charged with emotion. "Father," he said, "I want my hair cut." The room fell silent. Nkem, who had been tending the stew, froze mid-motion. Ekene looked up, his expression a mix of shock and disbelief. "Why would you ask such a thing, Dyke? You know the vow we made to the spirits." "I do," Dyke replied, his tone unyielding. "But this hair binds me to a destiny that is not my own. I will never be like Chidi. I want to choose my path." Nkem's voice trembled as she spoke. "Dyke, the spirits warned us. Cutting your hair could bring calamity to us all." Dyke's jaw tightened and he turned to his father. "I am not asking, Father. I am telling you. I will cut my hair with or without your blessing." Ikina's shoulders sagged under the weight of the decision. He loved his son deeply and saw the pain behind his defiance. With a heavy heart, he retrieved the sacred blade kept hidden since the twins' birth. That night, beneath the pale light of a full moon, he severed Dyke's locks. Each cut seemed to echo in the still night air, a sound that carried both sorrow and foreboding. As the final strand fell to the ground, a chill swept through the village. The goats stirred uneasily in their pens, and a distant howl pierced the night. Nkem clutched her shawl tightly, a sense of unease settling in her chest. Though the night was warm, she shivered. The curse unfolds. In the days that followed, strange occurrences began to plague Omugwe. Goats disappeared from their pens, their fates a mystery. The river, once clear and life-giving, grew murky and sluggish. The crops, despite the rains, began to wilt, their leaves curling as if recoiling from an unseen force. The villagers whispered of a curse, their voices hushed and fearful. Then came the lion. The beast was unlike anything the villagers had ever seen. Larger than any lion known in the region, its mane black as midnight, and its eyes burning with an unnatural fire. Its roars shook the trees, sending shivers down the spines of all who heard it. No hunter dared venture into the forest, for the creature seemed to be a force of nature, immune to ordinary weapons. The villagers turned to King Okeki, their ruler, for guidance. The king, a man of wisdom and courage, addressed his people with solemn authority. "This beast threatens us all," he declared. "Whoever slays it will be rewarded with a portion of the kingdom and the hand of my daughter, Princess Adayaze, in marriage." The proclamation stirred excitement among the young men of the village, but none dared step forward. All eyes turned to Chidi, whose reputation as a fearless hunter gave the villagers hope. Though he had no interest in wealth or power, Chidi felt the weight of their expectations. "I will face the lion," he said, his voice steady, "for the sake of Omugwe." The path of betrayal. As Chidi prepared for the hunt, Dyke watched him from the shadows, his emotions a storm of envy and guilt. He saw in his brother's actions a reflection of his own inadequacies, and the bitterness within him deepened. But envy soon gave way to a darker ambition. One night, under the cover of darkness, Dyke ventured to the edge of the forest, where the outcasts of Omugwe lived, men and women who had been banished for crimes against the village. They were a ruthless group, known for their cunning and treachery. Dyke approached them with a proposition. "I want my brother captured," he said, his voice cold. "In exchange, I will ensure you are rewarded with wealth and supplies." The outcasts, intrigued by the prospect of both gain and vengeance against the village that had cast them out, agreed. They set their trap, lying in wait for Chidi to enter the cursed forest. On the night of the hunt, Chidi and Dyke ventured into the woods together. Though their relationship had grown strained, Chidi's trust in his brother remained intact. "We face this lion as we have always faced challenges together," he said, clasping Dyke's shoulder. Dyke forced a smile, but his heart was heavy. The shadows of the forest seemed to press closer as they moved deeper into its depths. The air grew colder, the trees gnarled and twisted, their branches clawing at the sky. The lion's roar shattered the silence, and Chidi readied his spear. But before he could act, the outcasts emerged from the darkness, their weapons drawn. Chidi fought valiantly, but he was outnumbered. They overpowered him, binding his hands with rough ropes. As they dragged Chidi away, he looked back at his brother, confusion and betrayal etched on his face. "Why, Dyke?" he whispered, his voice breaking. "Why would you do this?" Dyke said nothing, his gaze fixed on the ground. The weight of his betrayal pressed down on him, but he convinced himself it was necessary, his path to freedom, his chance to escape the shadow of his brother. With envy taking root and the spirit's warning looming, the brothers' bond hangs by a thread. What will Dyke's choices mean for his family, his village, and himself? The twists are only just beginning, so don't miss Part 3, The Consequences of Betrayal. If this story has you hooked, show your love by liking this video, sharing it with someone who needs a powerful tale of family and destiny, and subscribing to our channel. Click the bell icon so you're the first to know when the next chapter drops. And in the comments, tell us, what would you do if you were in Dyke's shoes?